The 1960s were packed with unforgettable music, but not every legendary band stayed in the spotlight. Some delivered one massive hit, then vanished without a trace. Their songs still pop up on oldies stations, but their names? Long forgotten. These weren't just background noise. These bands shaped the sound of a generation, even if most people couldn't name them today. Some burned out fast. Others got buried by label drama, breakups, or wild behind-the-scenes chaos. And a few were replaced entirely, with new faces performing old hits in public, while the real musicians faded into obscurity. This video dives into 20 of those groups, from garage rock pioneers to sunshine pop dreamers, and everything in between. We'll uncover the hits you remember, and the strange, sometimes shocking stories behind the bands you don't. You might recognize a chorus, a hook, maybe even a single lyric, but the full story? That's what you're about to find out. These are the 1960s music legends you've probably forgotten, but their songs never really left. Let's dive in. Some songs hit the charts and never leave your head, but the bands behind them? Gone in a flash. Let's start with the one-hit wonders who dropped a timeless track, then vanished almost instantly. Take Spiral Staircase. Their 1969 hit, More Today Than Yesterday, still floats through wedding playlists and oldie stations like clockwork. It was upbeat, romantic, and insanely catchy. But what most people don't know is that the band barely lasted beyond the single. After scoring a modest hit, they struggled to match the momentum. Despite being backed by legendary producer Gary Usher, the same man behind the Beach Boys and the Byrds, Spiral Staircase couldn't survive the shifting tides of the late 60s music scene. Just like that, they faded away, leaving behind a song that somehow outlived them. Then there's Peppermint Rainbow, the sunshine pop band with a name as colorful as their sound. Their single Will You Be Staying After Sunday hit number 32 on the Billboard charts in 1969 and sold over 1 million copies. But despite the glowing reception, their follow-ups flopped. The momentum collapsed, and so did the band. One bright spring hit, then silence. And finally, Mercy. Their 1969 track, Love Can Make You Happy, climbed all the way to number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100. The song became a cultural moment, soft, hopeful, and impossibly wholesome. But behind the scenes? Total chaos. A different group tried to capitalize on Mercy's success by releasing a fake album using the same name. Fans were confused. The band was furious. And just like that, their real momentum evaporated. They each had one unforgettable hit, and then disappeared. But somehow, their music kept spinning, long after their names had slipped into the shadows. And the next bands, they didn't vanish. They launched music legends before walking off stage for good. Some bands may have faded from the spotlight, but they left something, or someone, behind who went on to make music history. These weren't just forgotten groups, they were stepping stones to something much bigger. Let's start with the McCoys. Their 1965 chart topper, Hang On Sloopy, made them teenage heartthrobs overnight. The band was young, fresh-faced, and played with a gritty garage energy that stood out in a polished pop world. But their real legacy wasn't the hit, it was their lead guitarist, Rick Derringer. After the McCoys fizzled out, Derringer exploded into the spotlight on his own. He shredded alongside Johnny Winter, played with the Edgar Winter Group, and even dropped the now iconic rock anthem, Rock and Roll, Hoochie Coo. The McCoys didn't survive the 60s, but they gave the world one of its most respected guitar heroes. Then there's Jimmy Gilmer and the Fireballs. Their hit, Sugar Shack, ruled the charts in 1963, 5 weeks at number 1. It had a quirky, upbeat charm that screamed early 60s Americana. But most listeners had no idea the group had been around long before that hit, and stuck around after. While the fame didn't last, Sugar Shack became a permanent fixture on oldies playlists, and their influence stretched into the surf rock wave that followed. And then you've got the T-Bones, a band that didn't even perform its own hit. Their song, No Matter What Shape Your Stomach's In, was pulled straight from an Alka-Seltzer jingle and turned into a surprise top 10 single in 1966. But here's the twist. The guys you saw on the album cover weren't the ones who recorded the song. The real track was created by the Wrecking Crew, a secret team of elite studio musicians behind countless hits of the era. Liberty Records assembled a fake T-Bones lineup just for touring. A manufactured band, selling a commercial jingle, turned chart phenomenon. These bands may have vanished, but their influence echoed far louder than anyone expected. Next up, the groups that had real talent, but disappeared long before they should have. Some bands showed flashes of genius, the kind that made you think they were destined for greatness, but then, nothing. No scandal, no big farewell, just silence. These are the groups that vanished far too soon. Start with Rose Garden. Their hit, Next Plane to London, reached number 17 on the Billboard charts in 1967 and seemed to position the band as America's next big folk rock breakout. Their harmonies were tight, their sound was polished, and their timing couldn't have been better. But right as things were taking off, the draft came calling. 2 members were sent off to war, and with them went the band's future. No scandals, no dramatic breakup, just real life crashing into a dream. Then came the Flying Machine, a British band with a sugary pop gem called Smile a Little Smile for Me. It hit number 5 on the US charts in 1969, and for a brief moment, they were riding high. But behind the scenes, the group was barely holding together. They were stitched together from members of a different band, struggling to find their footing as a unit. After just 1 album and a few failed follow-ups, the Machine sputtered out. Their one hit stuck around, but the band didn't. And then there's the Left Banke, a group that critics once believed would redefine pop music. Their 1966 classic, Walk Away Renée, was pure elegance, orchestral, emotional, and hauntingly beautiful. They pioneered what the press dubbed Baroque pop, blending classical instruments with rock in a way nobody else dared. But behind the artistry was chaos. Management issues, internal rivalries, and financial misfires tore them apart by the end of the decade. They briefly reunited in the 70s, recorded a forgotten soundtrack, and disappeared again. Each of these bands had the talent, the timing, and the sound. But sometimes, talent isn't enough to outrun bad luck. Up next, the Trailblazers, who didn't just play music, they set the stage on fire, literally. In the late 60s, rock music got weird and brilliant. Bands started pushing boundaries with wild sounds, strange lyrics, and stage shows that felt more like acid-fueled fever dreams. Some didn't just embrace the psychedelic movement, they helped create it. Take the Seeds. This Los Angeles garage rock group wasn't polished, and that's exactly why they hit so hard. Their raw, chaotic single Pushin' Too Hard scraped its way into the top 40 in 1967, powered by frontman Sky Saxon's manic vocals and a pounding rhythm that made the song feel like a breakdown in progress. It was pure, unfiltered rebellion. They followed it with Mr. Farmer and Can't Seem to Make You Mine, both dipped in fuzz and paranoia. But the world moved fast. As psychedelic rock evolved, the Seeds got left behind, their sound too raw, too unhinged, too early. They disbanded quietly, but not before leaving a blueprint for punk decades later. Then there was the crazy world of Arthur Brown. If you've never seen a man in a flaming helmet scream, "I am the god of hellfire," at the top of his lungs, you've never met Arthur. His 1968 hit, Fire, was a global sensation. Bizarre, theatrical, and completely unforgettable. Brown's operatic voice and stage antics were like nothing else at the time. He painted his face, wore wild costumes, and set himself on fire, literally. But the act was impossible to sustain. Band tensions, burnout, and the sheer intensity of the performance eventually burned the group out. And don't forget the Beau Brummels, often mistaken for a British invasion band, even though they were pure San Francisco. Their hits, Laugh Laugh, and Just a Little, had a jangly melancholic sound that predated the folk rock explosion. They should have been huge, but poor management, health issues, and a long list of missed opportunities buried them before they ever reached their peak. These bands didn't just chase trends, they helped invent them. But innovation doesn't always guarantee survival. Next, the bands that sounded British, but were secretly all-American. During the peak of the British invasion, sounding like you were from London was practically a cheat code for success, even if you were born and raised in the US. These next bands fooled a lot of people, and for a brief moment, they played right alongside the British greats. Start with the Buckinghams. With a name like that and a polished horn-infused pop sound, most assumed they were straight out of the UK. In reality, Chicago kids with a knack for catchy hooks. Their 1967 smash, Kind of a Drag, hit #1 and launched them into teen idol status almost overnight. They followed it up with hits like Don't You Care and Susan, and even made the rounds on shows like Ed Sullivan and American Bandstand. But by 1968, the pop scene had changed. Their label pushed for new directions, and one by one, the members began to peel off. The band imploded, just as fast as they rose. Then there's the Outsiders, best known for their gritty 1966 hit, Time Won't Let Me. With driving guitars and a frontman who could belt with soul, they sounded like they belonged on a British stage. But they were pure Cleveland, rough, loud, and honest. Unfortunately, they made one major mistake. They passed on recording Bend Me, Shape Me, a song that became a hit for someone else. That one decision sent them spiraling, and none of their follow-ups ever broke through again. Finally, we have Classics 4. Their smooth, jazzy hits Spooky, Stormy, and Traces are still favorites today. Timeless, moody, and haunting. But behind the scenes, the band was constantly shifting. Members came and went. Their sound evolved. And by the time the 70s rolled around, their chart success had dried up. Still, their signature blend of jazz pop left a lasting imprint. They had the look. They had the sound. But none of them had the staying power of their British peers. Coming up next, a few international acts you've definitely heard, but probably never knew where they came from. Not every hit that rocked American radios came from within US borders. Some of the most unexpected chart toppers came from overseas. Bands with strange names, unusual origins, and songs that crossed oceans before disappearing for good. Let's start with 4 Jacks and a Jill. Ever heard Master Jack? It hit number 18 on the US Billboard Hot 100 in 1968, and cracked the top 10 in Canada, Australia, and even Zimbabwe. But here's the twist. The band was South African. In fact, they were one of the first groups in the country to sport long hair, triggering controversy just for how they looked. Their soft, haunting style masked a deeper message. Master Jack was rumored to be a subtle critique of the political regime back home. But while the song soared internationally, their follow-ups never made a dent in the US. They returned to local fame in South Africa, eventually recording children's music and educational albums. Then there's The Fortunes. Formed in Birmingham, England, they broke through with You've Got Your Troubles in 1965, a heartfelt, harmony-driven hit that reached the US, UK, and Canadian top 10. For a while, it looked like they might become one of the era's next big British exports. But despite follow-ups like Here Comes That Rainy Day Feeling Again, they couldn't hold on to that momentum. Frequent lineup changes and changing musical tastes chipped away at their relevance. By the mid-70s, they were playing the nostalgia circuit, beloved but mostly forgotten by the mainstream. And then we have the Cyrkle. Their biggest hit, Red Rubber Ball, was co-written by Paul Simon, and they even opened for the Beatles during their 1966 US tour. Not bad for a group from Pennsylvania. Their bright folk-pop sound seemed destined for more. But lightning never struck twice. Follow-up singles tanked, and by 1968, the band quietly disbanded. They came from far and wide, and for a moment, they conquered the charts. But even international success couldn't guarantee longevity. Next up, the groups that didn't vanish quietly. They transformed completely. Some bands didn't fade, they shape-shifted, changed faces, swapped singers, and morphed over time. So much so that the band you heard in the beginning wasn't always the one you saw at the end. These weren't just groups, they were revolving doors of talent and reinvention. Take Jay and the Americans. The name never changed, but the man behind the mic sure did. The group started in the late 50s, with original lead singer Jay Traynor fronting their first major hit, She Cried. It was raw, emotional, and climbed all the way to number 5 on the charts. But just as their career was gaining traction, Traynor left, replaced by a different Jay, this time Jay Black. And that's when things exploded. With Black's powerful voice leading the way, the band delivered a string of unforgettable hits like Come a Little Bit Closer and Cara Mia. His soaring vocals gave the group an operatic edge that set them apart in a sea of doo-wop and pop acts. But behind the scenes, things were never stable. Members came and went. Legal battles over the band's name dragged on for years. And when the group finally split in the early 70s, Jay Black kept touring, still using the name Jay and the Americans, even though the original group had long since scattered. Then, decades later, the unthinkable happened. The remaining original members bought back the rights to the band's name and relaunched it with a new J. Yet another fresh face fronting the old sound. Same songs, same harmonies, just a different voice leading the charge. They were never the same band twice, and yet, somehow, they always were. It's one of the strangest legacies in pop music, a group held together not by people, but by a name, and a catalog of timeless hits. Next, we're wrapping up with a look back at all the voices, riffs, and rhythms that shaped the sound of the 60s, and how their echoes still linger today. They weren't just songs, they were snapshots of a generation, frozen in time, echoing through radios, record players, and faded memories. Some of these bands had only a moment in the sun. Others helped launch careers that would outlive them by decades. But all of them left something behind, a melody, a feeling, a spark that never fully faded. Maybe you remember dancing to Red Rubber Ball, or hearing Master Jack in the background of an old movie. Maybe you didn't know who sang Spooky, but you knew the way it made you feel. That's the strange power of these forgotten groups. Their names may be lost to time, but their songs still find ways to sneak back into our lives. Behind every chart-topping single was a story of creative brilliance, industry chaos, personal tragedy, or plain old bad luck. Some of these artists kept chasing the dream long after the spotlight moved on. Others walked away, never looking back. But they all helped shape the soundtrack of the 60s. So as you listen to those old tunes again, maybe with a new sense of context, remember, every one of them came from someone who had something to say, even if they only got to say it once. Which of these bands brought back a memory for you? And which ones do you think deserve a second chance at being remembered? Let us know in the comments. And if you want more deep dives into the music, mysteries, and forgotten icons of the past, you know what to do. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.